If you're keeping up with the latest Geometry Dash news, you might know that Robtop is planning to release 2.2 by the end of this year. Hopefully, the long-awaited update, which Robtop has currently been working on for 5 years, should come sooner than later. But what will happen after 2.2 comes out? Are things going to stay the same, or will Robtop make the game radically different than it is today? In this video, I'm going to present to you my thoughts on the choices Robtop might have to make if he wants to keep the game and community alive and active. We will also dive into the present state of the game, as well as its future and what's going to actually happen to the game itself and the community. Before we dive into the video, make sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss out on any new updates or content. Before we look into the future, we must understand the past and the present. Robtop, the creator of the game, used to release updates a lot more frequently than now, with the gaps between new additions to the game being approximately 3 to 4 months. But as more things were added, the gap between updates started to increase little by little. The gap between 1.9 and 2.0, for example, was about 9 months, but the gap between 2.0 and 2.1 was about 1.5 years. And as you know, we've been waiting for 2.2 since January 16 of 2017. But currently, the game and the community don't really show any signs of dying, but it hasn't experienced a massive increase in popularity either. As you can see from this chart, this game is now one of the most popular games out there, but it still remains its community, with the amount of current players consistently reaching 10,000 at multiple points of time. Although the game hasn't had anything new, the community decided to take the initiative and create their own things in Geometry Dash, such as new types of levels, extra leaderboards such as the Point Grade Demon List, and others have even added private servers in which you can freely access part of 2.2. In addition, rather than acting like an omniscient deity, Robtop commonly interacts with his players in daily levels, Twitter, and even Discord, sometimes showing a tiny part of what might happen in the future of the game, and other times doing just whatever. More information can be found in my other video, which can be found on the top right of the screen. But in short, the game is pretty stable, but it isn't dramatically increasing in popularity. With knowledge of the past and the present, we can now look into the future. Now with that being said, could the game survive long term without 2.2? Most likely not. The community is alive in the present, but that's not going to last forever. People will start to get bored of the game because as more levels are created, that starts to limit the chances for completely new and unique levels. When 2.1 came out, it opened up a new opportunity for new types of levels that no one could predict, such as Master Game, a complete game engine in which you can even save your progress in the game. But levels eventually are going to start to become repetitive and boring unless new features are added, which open up new possibilities. I don't think Robtop with this community is going to keep the game alive either, because Robtop in 20 years, he's going to be 55, and I doubt he's going to sit and talk to his community for that long, because he obviously has a life like all of you should. He's eventually going to become married and have kids, which he most likely will have less time developing his game as a result. What if new updates like 2.2 or even 2.3 and beyond get released, then the game will have a chance to preserve itself with players constantly getting access to new creative and original levels, as well as more possibilities of playing the game more. If this is the case, then it might not even matter if Robtop decides to marry and focus on his personal life. Because at this point in time, Geometry Dash combined with this active community is now a living independent organism. The game will have enough features by then to keep players hooked and pretty much carve out its own future. I believe the amount of active players once 2.2 hits will be very similar to how it was for 2.1. It's gonna skyrocket for a few months to slowly decrease until it hits a higher point of stagnation. The reason being that players will have to get used to all the features that this massive update holds, and it's not gonna take one day, not even 1 week. But the community might affect the stagnation of players in Geometry Dash, depending on how it itself changes in the near future. As mentioned before, the community is carrying the game on its back, and it's pretty much the thing keeping the game as live as it is. This is why you still see Geometry Dash levels and videos on YouTube still hitting hundreds of thousands of downloads and millions of views despite not having an update. Although it seems like the game is becoming stale, the community is actually working their butt up preventing that from happening. But there is another factor that we do have to consider. Along with Robtop, people in the community are going to grow up and pursue their own careers, which can make them deprioritize Geometry Dash. You see this with Alex Payne 24. He was a lot more active in 2015 and 2016 when he was non-stop grinding the hardest levels at the time, but you don't really see him on Geometry Dash as often. At the most, social networks like YouTube and Twitter, but as long as the community keeps to get active, to follow those old players, could give rise to a new group of players that become interested in the game's mechanics and verify even harder demons, such as the case with Space UK, Diamond, and Trick to name a few. If the game continues without any big updates like 2.2, then even though the stagnation of the game itself could possibly cause Geometry Dash to decrease a little in popularity, the community could continue to prevent that from happening. If the community is this active with the features up to 2.1, then think of how many options are available for the community and the game itself when 2.2 gets released. Who knows what new trends might be created by features such as the map, platformer mode, events, multiplayer mode, etc. As far as I know, the community is not going anywhere, and in 2.2, it could make the game even more unique than it is, making Geometry Dash more than just a Square game. We must also consider 3 more factors before making an accurate prediction on the future of Geometry Dash. This first factor is time, or when 2.2 is actually going to come out. Whether Robtop takes a few months or possibly even 1 or 2 more years. If 2.2 actually does come out during the other half of this year, then there's going to be a greater spike of players coming back to the game. But let's say the game comes out later, in like late 2023, then there's going to be more people detached from the community, and there's going to be less active players in Geometry Dash. The second factor we have to consider is the reputation of Geometry Dash among the general public. Due to the amount of pedophilia and pedophiles becoming exposed, this leaves a bad name on the Geometry Dash community in general, and might convince players not to get involved in a community that seems to be full of pedophiles. Though, I believe that there should be a report player button in the game. Hopefully that could reduce the problem. And finally, the last but honestly least crucial factor, 2.2 is probably scratch that. It is Geometry Dash's biggest update, so there's definitely going to be a lot of bugs and glitches present. But if Robtop beta tests the update and remove those bugs before he publicly releases it, then that problem can be minimized to the highest extent possible. And even then, Robtop could just release an additional update equivalent to 2.11 that could also fix 2.2 bugs.
I come from the future, and the future will be beautiful, with pizza at the speed of light.
So what is exactly going to happen after 2.2? No one can completely predict the future, but looking at the data of active players and the rebounding effect on Geometry Dash, it's safe to say that the game's biggest update will make the game more lively and flourishing. The different types of gameplay, levels, and content on social media enable Geometry Dash to expand into a rhythm-based platformer game that we've only started to see the likes of. Few communities have persevered like this one to keep the game active and alive, like dogs patiently waiting for their owners. The bad things which affect the future are pretty much minuscule and pretty much overshadowed by the amazing and upcoming possibilities that 2.2 has to offer Geometry Dash. And I don't see an end to this even after 2.2 comes out. There's no need to worry about the game's future because the future is going to be beautiful. If you want to see more content from yours truly, make sure to like the video, subscribe to my channel, and do me a favor and hit the bell. Also make sure to join the Discord server where we're secretly trying to overthrow the government. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.